All right, Final Resolution is in the books. We're here on Brace for Impact talking the Final Resolution TNA Plus special. I am your party host, Mike Gilbert, and thank you for being here. A special thank you to the Patreon subscribers who have been in the chat during this episode. We have been on the air for 51 minutes, and we have finally gotten to Final Resolution. We did 40 minutes on Tessa. We talked about the this week's Impact episode, and now it is time to talk about Final Resolution, which I thought was a pretty damn good show. It was sold out in Center Stage. They sold out the third and fourth wrestling event in Center Stage in a 7 calendar day period, which I think is pretty damn good. Game Changer ran a week before, and then on Thursday night, Westside Gun was running his fourth rope wrestling show with the help of TNA, obviously. And the only ones that sold out were TNA's Final Resolution and the TV tapings afterwards. And the crowd was hot all night. Good stuff. As Io says, 7th consecutive live event sellout, PLE, but there's a difference between PLE and pay-per-view. PLE would be a TNA Plus special, right? Premium live event. Pay-per-view was, we're talking, they've been selling out every pay-per-view and every TNA Plus special for the last 7 ones. I think the last one that they didn't sell out was Under Siege, I want to say in May. So since June, they have been selling out every live pay-per-view and every live TNA Plus special. And kudos to them, clearly. They have been doing a great job. I'll be honest, I didn't think this card storyline-wise warranted the crowd that they got, but the crowd showed up and was ready to go. And they looked good. It was hot. And ultimately it turned out to be a really good show. I think that because it was, people thought of it as a throwaway show because of the star quality in the main event, and you passed on it. I think you probably should go ahead and give it a look. It was an easy watch. It was fun to watch. They had some really good matches on the show. And we'll get to those matches. But let's go over the pre-show. I didn't watch this match, but Dango defeated Leon Slater, which has heat with me. But I think they're trying to build a story with Slater and the system, because ultimately Leon Slater is probably the guy that's going to beat Moose. And I think my buddy Dobby the Brain Heenan was the one that pointed that out. It's like, yeah, they're clearly building a storyline here. So I'm not going to be too mad. JDC covered Slater, gets his feet on the ropes, added leverage for the pinfall victory. So he cheated. He cheated to win, and they're trying to teach him a lesson. I think they're trying to get him away from Moose and the X Division title because they see him as the biggest threat to it. So I hope it leads to something like that. I don't know if they'll ever pay it off, but that is my hope. Billy says that was the best JDC match I've seen besides the Texas Death match with Santana. So Billy, who would not bullshit us and will tell us if something stinks, says that match was actually worth going out of your way to watch. So there you go. All right, now we got to get to Frankie Kazarian defeating Jonathan Gresham. Jonathan Gresham of Atlanta, Georgia, losing on the pre-show in his hometown. If that doesn't scream Jonathan Gresham leaving the company, I don't know what does. I thought the match was fine. The match was good. But Gresham ends up tapping out to the chicken wing. That tells you all you need to know about the future of Jonathan Gresham in this company. He is Dunsky's. He is gone. Contract set to expire probably right around the same time as Jordan Grace. I don't know what's going to happen with Gresham. I think he probably goes. I don't think he's going to wrestle for WWE, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a coach there. Because I just don't think he has what WWE likes. I'm not just talking about his height, because they've had shorter wrestlers before. I just don't think his style jives with what they do in WWE. I don't know. I'd be curious to see what happens with him, but I do think that he would probably be a really good coach in NXT, just teaching people fundamentals, basics, submission holds, transitions. Like he's very top tier in the ring grappler. Like the dude knows his stuff. I personally felt like TNA could have done a lot more with him, but it just didn't ever really seem like his heart was in it. After everything went south with him in Ring of Honor, it just never seemed like he was fully committed to being a television pro wrestler anymore. He's had the occasional really good match. Like he had a really good match with Alex Shelley. He had a good match with Josh Alexander, Laredo Kid at one point. I thought he had a really good match with Charlie Dempsey. So I don't know what the future holds for Jonathan Gresham, but his run you can't really characterize his TNA run as anything other than disappointing, I would say. The creative for him was disappointing, and I thought his output overall with some of his character stuff was disappointing. The octopus thing where he was doing the Great Muta thing just fell flat, just didn't work. And the whole thing just kind of was like, oh man, just really, really tough for Jonathan Gresham. It's sad to see him go out like this, but that's the way it is, man. That's the business. But let's get to the main show. Moose defeated Kushida. And guys, this is going to be highly offensive to some of you. This was another really good match for Moose as the X Division champion. I thought this was a very good opening match. Moose made Kushida look like an absolute threat to the X Division title, even though everybody going in knew that Kushida was not going to win that match. But Moose doesn't get credit for being a really good wrestler. He's a very good heel, and he's doing a great job in this X Division. I know people did not like the fact that he beat Speedball, but he is bringing a different type of intensity and a different type of, with just his size and athleticism, he's bringing a unique dynamic to the division that we have not seen in a long time. And he's having really good matches. So we had, like, the match of Speedball was one of the best television matches of the year for the company. And he ended up having a really good match with Laredo Kid. Now, you could argue he should not have had a good match with Laredo Kid, that he should have killed Laredo because Laredo never wins. But they still had a really good match. And then I thought he followed it up with another really good match here. He's been a good champion. I know that's going to be offensive to some people because you don't like Moose. I get it. But at some point, you got to realize and you got to admit to the fact that Moose is actually a really good wrestler. That was on display here. And him and Kushida worked a hell of a match, I thought. And it didn't overstay its welcome. It wasn't super long. I think it might have been like 12, 13 minutes, maybe 15 with introductions and all that stuff. But Moose quickly shifts the momentum back in his favor. Moose goes to work on Kushida, all the while selling his left arm is nearly unusable as a result of the spear into the steps to the floor. Another targeted offense from Kushida early on. So yeah, Kushida did a good job of working the arm. Kushida begins showing signs of life and ultimately fights back in a competitive form. The challenger takes over and eventually gets the champion in a surfboard lock submission on his bad arm. So the guy recapper undersells what happened here. Moose went for a splash off the top rope and Kushida caught him in the hoverboard lock. And Moose struggles for quite a while in the hold, but eventually makes it to the ropes to break the hold. Moments later, Moose takes Kushida out with a big spear to win and retain the TNA X Division Championship. So a really good match to open the show. Next we get to the Rascals defeating Salami Callahan and PCO and Jake Something. So the story with Jake Something going solo here is that Hammerstone was actually injured at Turning Point. Now, people didn't know that because he technically worked last night on Impact, but that match was taped before he got hurt at Turning Point. And so they had to break the news during the pre-show that Jake Something was going to go solo in the match. It didn't really take away from the match. I thought this match was actually pretty good. PCO the Rascals were super over, by the way. But they weren't as over as PCO. PCO, people like say what you want about PCO, but every match he's been in has always been like he's always been over. He's always gotten the crowd into it. Back in the ring, Callahan hits Miguel with a stunner. PCO enters the ring, but is beaten down by Miguel and Wentz. Something hits the ring and powerbombs Wentz, and then powerbombs Miguel onto Wentz as he was on all fours. Something hoists Callahan and hits a seated powerbomb. He blasts PCO with a boot to the bread basket and hits a fourth powerbomb. PCO does the Undertaker dead man sit up, stands behind Something as he boasts to the crowd. Something turns around and PCO looks for an inverted DDT. Instead, is blasted by Miguel, who runs from the entrance ramp, leaps over the ropes with a big kick. Wentz follows that with a big cutter over the ropes. Both members of the Rascals double team Something. They get the finish on Jake something, and I thought that match was really good. After the match, the Mystery 23 video plays again with Callahan in the ring. Somebody's targeting Callahan and PCO. My belief, and I don't have any inside information on this is just Sami Callahan fucking with PCO. And then it's going to be PCO or Sami turning on PCO. Something's got to happen. PCO is holding the digital media and the International Heavyweight Championship hostage. He has not defended them in forever. He won the match. He won the belts in July and has not done anything with them. He only defended them, I think, once or twice, once being at Bound for Glory against Matt Cardona. And so they might as well just throw those belts in the trash at this point if they're not going to do anything with them. So, yeah, if it's, and I said this earlier on the Impact reaction, if it's anything less than Pentagon, it's going to ultimately be a disappointment. I said anything less. So it has to be equal to Pentagon or above, right? Now, why am I saying Pentagon? I don't know that Pentagon's coming to TNA. In fact, all signs are pointing towards Pentagon going to WWE. Okay, and that would make the most sense. If I were a betting man, that's what I would bet on. But Pentagon's, Sami Callahan's greatest feuds, he had 2 great feuds. Well, 3. He's got Eddie Edwards, right, which lasted friggin' forever. It was like Tito Santana and Rick Martel. Tessa Blanchard, right, which Tessa's back in the Knockouts division, and Pentagon. And Pentagon was probably like up until that point was after the Eddie feud was his biggest feud. And there's a history there. There's a connection there, but it has nothing to do with PCO. So I'm ultimately predicting that it's Sami that is the 23, and it's going to be revealed on January 23rd that Sami is turning against PCO. And then it's ultimately going to be a disappointment because I don't think anybody really cares about that. So there you go. Okay. Ace Austin defeated Trent Seven. I'll be honest, the crowd. Oh, hold on. Let me go to this. Io says PCO's defended him twice, Shira and Cardona. God, that's embarrassing. Billy says those belts to PCO should just be his gift for selling so many tickets at Slammiversary. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it was. Io says Penta would help the West and Hispanic fan base go get him. What a way to piss off Tony while he waits till Phoenix is available. I don't think Tony would be pissed off if he went to TNA. I don't think Tony actually thinks about TNA, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think TNA would be a good transition home, like a halfway house for Pentagon while he waits to go to WWE. He's got to wait for Phoenix because Phoenix has got like a year left on his deal with AEW. So he might as well go to TNA for a while he waits for his brother. All right, let's get to Ace Austin versus Trent Seven. The crowd was a bit cold for this for a while because they had just come off of what was a pretty hot match with the tag team match. Honestly, more hotter than I thought it would be. But by the end, they actually had the crowd and people really got behind Ace Austin, but it took them a while and it took a 7 connect with a Birmingham hammer on the hard part of the apron, the outside. And then Trent starts to talk to Ace as remains laid out in the ring. He grabs his hand, shushes the crowd before yanking and twisting the fingers to the point of cracking, clearly audible. Austin fights back with a spinning heel kick that flattens Seven. Austin goes for the art of finesse, but Seven avoids and connects with a 7-star lariat. Follows up with a pile driver, goes for the cover, but Austin kicked out at 1. So that's when they really got the crowd back into it. And then Ace Austin hit the art of finesse and then followed it up with the fold for the victory. By the end of the match, it turned out to be a really good match. For the crowd, for crowd reaction. Crowd was not really into that early on, but they ultimately ended up getting the crowd. Okay, now here's where everybody gets talking about Final Resolution. Here's where the internet went wild. This is getting the most attention from the show. Jordynne Grace defeats Rosemary by disqualification. So they're having an okay match. And in the middle of the match, as Jordynne Grace is going for a pin on Rosemary, someone in a big puffed out jacket and ski mask beats down the Juggernaut, throwing some incredible strikes, very intense moves, ends up hitting the inverted DDT. and then lays out Jordan Grace in the middle of the ring, and then slowly takes the jacket off to reveal a muscular female body, and then removes the mask, and it is Tessa Blanchard in the flesh. She has returned after being away for almost 5 years from the company, being really off American television altogether for 5 years. You can say she was on WoW, but like I know people say that WoW had more viewership than TNA, but that was really just people like leaving their TV on late at night and forgetting to turn it off. WoW is not like a real company. It's not a real wrestling show. Um, she, oddly enough, that went south. But if you want to hear me have my takes on Tessa Blanchard, I did a video earlier in the week on Friday. And of course, me and Lucha Doncic did 40 minutes at the beginning of this podcast all about Tessa. So I'm not really going to talk too much about it. But eventually unveiling herself to be Tessa. Afterwards, Jim Miller scrambles to catch up with her backstage to ask her to explain her actions. She says she's back to get what's rightfully hers. She shoves Gia and walks off. The crowd was into it there, and she's a heel, which I think is smart. I don't think you bring Tessa back as a babyface, given all her issues. And it looks like they're going to try to do some realistic storyline between Tessa and Jordan Grace, leading to a match at Genesis. And I think that match will be incredible. Say what you want about Tessa. In the ring, she can go. It's been a while since she's had a big time match. She's been in CMLL doing mostly tags and trios. So we'll see if she can still have a match in a headlining spot with a top act like Jordan Grace. We'll see if she can still go to that level. But before she left, she was one of the best women in North America. So she was very good. We'll see. But I'm not really going to go too crazy on Tessa Blanchard here. Let's see. Io says 1 million views on that tweet right now. Yeah. So Tessa, say what you want about Tessa, man. She can get people talking. Good, bad, and indifferent. She gets attention. And then next we go to what was in my opinion, the match of the night. And what I thought should have been the main event, to be honest with you. I thought this is how they should have closed the show. But Joe Hendry defeating Josh Alexander, Steve Macklin, and Mike Santana. The crowd was hot for this match. The crowd was hot for Joe Hendry and Mike Santana specifically. You could tell that there's levels to being over, and Joe Hendry, he edges out Mike Santana here, but Mike Santana is really popular. And they hit tons of big moves, dives to the outside, brawling everywhere, and then tons of great near falls, and the crowd was just really into it. Let's go towards the latter part of the match. Hendry hits a super follow-away slam on Alexander off the top rope. Santana and Macklin followed up with high spots immediately afterwards, but the subsequent pin attempts were broken up. We see dive after dive from the ring to the floor, culminating with Hendry running and clearing the top rope. He looked like he was doing a high dive. Not a high dive, a high jump, like an Olympic high jump where he just does that. It actually looked really good. And the crowd just blew up for that. And that's where you got the "This is awesome" chant. The crowd just exploded. And then Alexander takes Santana, and apparently Josh Alexander doesn't know how to use zip ties. In fact, he was trying to zip tie Santana for so long that the crowd started chanting, "You don't know how to use zip ties," which I thought was pretty funny, and he deserves that. So if you don't know how to use the equipment, maybe try not to do that, and don't try to do that during a match. But he ends up zip tying Santana to the barricade. In the ring, Macklin looks for the KIA on Hendry, only for Alexander to low blow him. Alexander then hits a standing ovation, or Hendry hits a standing ovation on Alexander seconds later for the win. And Hendry is moving on to challenge the winner of the main event for the TNA Championship at Genesis 2025, only on pay-per-view, Dallas, Texas. So there you go. I thought that match was awesome. I can't say enough good things about that match. I thought they really did good. And Io is right. Hendry, still over. He is still over. He is not over like the Hardys. He's right below them, but he's still there. He is still freaking over. Honestly, one of the biggest matches they can make. Look, Hendry has to win the title at Genesis, right? If they could probably headline Slammiversary with Joe Hendry versus Jeff Hardy, and that's probably what would sell the most tickets, to be quite honest with you. I know it's babyface, so that would be tough. But those are the two biggest stars in the company, and then right below them would be Santana. Santana's from New York, so maybe they do something with Santana in New York. I think that would be smart, but we'll see what they do. And then Masha Slamovich defeated Tasha Steelz in a Falls Count Anywhere match. I'll be honest, I can't really judge this match too much because I missed most of it. And that was my bad. But Masha ended up getting the victory. Santino kicked Alicia Edwards out at the beginning of the match and did a whole gimmick there. Banned her from ringside. They brawled all over the area. From what I remember, the crowd wasn't really into it, but I couldn't keep up with the match. I had something else going on, so I couldn't finish watching the match. But I did see the end. They continue to battle. They find themselves up near the top of the entranceway. Slamovich ends up hitting the snowplow and scoring the pinfall in the aisle to retain. So this was unnecessarily a Falls Count Anywhere match, but I think they just needed to do something because this match was sandwiched in between that hot four-way and the tables match, which everybody was looking forward to. So they wanted to do something, and I don't know that it worked. It was well, let's see. Billy says Masha match was very hard hitting. It was very good. So Billy says the Masha match was good. It's going to be something I have to go back and watch. I just had something else going on, so I really couldn't pay attention to it. So, all right. And then next we get to the inevitable Hardy pop of the night, which prompted Io to DM me saying, listen to that pop. It was incredible. So the System come out and, they're over his heel. Like, they got a lot of heat, actually. Eddie and Brian, and we'll get to how much heat, like incredible amount of heat for the System. Eddie Edwards specifically. But when the Hardys music kicks on, that crowd just goes apeshit. Like, they went insane. These guys are fucking so over. So over. It's just an intense pop. The Atlanta crowd gives them by far the loudest pop of the evening. Yeah. And then, but the System drew a ton of heat. At one point, they had an F the System chant that was just so loud. You could, at one point several points during the match, the crowd was so loud that you couldn't even really hear Hannafin on commentary because the crowd noise was coming through his microphone. It was that bad. So let's get to one of the best moments of the night. As the action continues, Eddie ends up getting in the fan's face in the front row, and the fan throws a light slap at Eddie, but it connects. Okay, he's underselling a key aspect of this part. Eddie went up to the fan and slapped a water bottle out of his hand. Gets in the fan's face, and then the fan throws a slap at Eddie. It wasn't a hard slap, but it's still a slap nonetheless. He put his hands on a wrestler. I would also say Eddie should not be slapping water bottles out of people's hands. So now what is going to happen is now that guy's been turned over to the police. They're going to go back and look at the footage, and we're going to see who instigated it. And Eddie hit him first. Eddie slapped the bottle out of his hands first. I'm not saying it was right for what the fan did. The fan should not have slapped Eddie. I'm not saying that at all. But when you take a look at it, I don't think this guy's going to get in any kind of trouble because Eddie instigated it. Now, he was doing it as part of his heel character, but there is no written agreement between the fans and the wrestlers that they get to come to you and slap stuff out of your hands. There is no agreement that says that. So Eddie technically instigated the moment by doing his heel character, and you got a drunk fan in the front, and he throws a slap at Eddie, and that was a huge fucking mistake because then Eddie slapped the shit out of him. Rightfully so. And I loved it. I think Eddie belongs in the Hall of Fame just for slapping this guy. He slapped him and then shoved him down. And then, of course, the crowd goes crazy for this. And then the fan gets escorted out of the building. But wrestlers, you don't get to touch fans first, right? If a fan hits you first, hit him. Eddie slapped the water bottle out of the guy's hand. He should not have done that. Similarly, like MJF will go and he'll slap beers out of people's hands. I've seen him take beers and slap them and splash people with them. And if a fan hit him because of that, he would deserve it, right? Now, I don't think Eddie deserved to slap here. He was just being a heel. But when you take a look at it like legally, like if this guy gets a lawyer to get out of trouble, get out of whatever ticket or whatever thing he's going to get, since he was handed over to the police. That's what Sean Russap reported. They're going to go back and look at the footage, and they're going to see Eddie Edwards slapping the bottle out of his hand and instigating the situation first. That's it. Like, that's not, I'm not making that up. I'm not taking the fan side. I'm not. I'm saying, like, from an objective, like, legal perspective, Eddie instigated the situation by slapping the water bottle out of his hand. Okay. Then that fan makes a huge mistake by slapping Eddie. It was, maybe he meant it as to be playful. I don't know what the hell he was thinking, slapping Eddie. Eddie slapped the shit out of him, and that wasn't everything that Eddie had. Eddie could have really hurt this guy. And because that guy didn't look like he was in a very good condition, right, to be able to take hits. He did stay there, and then he got shoved down, and then, of course, security quickly got him out of there. But this reminded me of very old school pro wrestling. Very old school stuff here. Old school heat. I loved everything about it. I loved this match, even at times where it seemed like it dragged while they're setting up spots. And I think you're just going to get that with the Hardys now, because they're not so quick on their feet anymore while they set up their spots. But Eddie slapped the holy hell out of a fan in return, and then shoving and prompted the two referees to jump in and make sure that nothing escalates. Eddie yells directly into the camera, "I'm still having fun." Yeah, it was a good moment. Let's go to the end here. Matt beats down Myers and Edwards so they go up to the mezzanine level, and the system set up a table in front of the doorway in the balcony, and they gloat and taunt the fans after laying Jeff on the table, only for Matt to bust through the doors behind him with a chair. He beats down Myers and Edwards as Jeff recovers. The Hardys use chairs, and then yet again we see, so there's a piece of a table broken due to Jeff. This time the commentators point out, because the system didn't specifically put Jeff through the table, it doesn't count. I would say, like, sporting wise, like, there'd never be such thing as a tables match, but technically I think the system won this match, but we'll go ahead and overlook that. After getting rid of the table that partially broke, Matt sets up another one, puts Edwards on it, and Jeff climbs to the balcony, takes his shirt off. Crowd goes crazy. And then he just, like, he is so good at this. He takes a step from a seat and then just takes a ginger step on top of the rail and then in one fluid motion does a swanton bomb through the table. It was incredible. Jeff Hardy's 46 years old. And he's insane. He is crazy. That table just exploded. I'm like, brother, you're too old to do this shit, but God bless you. I'll continue to watch you doing it for as long as you're willing to do it. The crowd just goes insane. Hardys are so over. That's the end of the match. Hardy Boys retain the championship. Really, really good stuff. Now, I want to get to the chat here. Just great stuff. You're right, Mike. You can't touch a fan first. Wrestlers throw or rip up fans' signs away too. Yes, that is different. He actually, you're saying Eddie didn't assault him first. If you walk up to somebody on the street and slap water out of their hands, you could actually get charged with assault for that. Technically, I'm just looking at it from a legal perspective, right? I don't think this guy's going to get in any trouble for this. I don't. I think he's got it. Like, I think if any good lawyer will point out that Eddie slapped a water bottle out of his hand, and there was no agreement. There's no agreement between Eddie and that fan that's okay. I'm just looking at it from a legal perspective. I think he slapped a water bottle. The guy got out of line, slapped him in the face. Eddie slapped the shit out of him. I think we're even, honestly, at that point. I don't think this guy is going to spend any time in jail. I don't think he's going to get a fine or a ticket. I think any good lawyer will point out that Eddie instigated the situation. Mike, you might make a good lawyer someday. I don't know the law that well, but I know enough to know. I've dealt with cases in the military to know that Eddie started it. That's it. Billy, why am I holding my breath every time Jeff does a swanton bomb? I always expect Jeff or the opponent to get injured. Io says, how Jeff survived these tables matches, ladders matches is wild. I think these matches led to a lot of Jeff's problems, to be honest with you, and I'm surprised he's still doing them, but God love him. I mean, he's just one of the most incredible performers I've ever seen. And for him to be still doing this stuff at 46 years old, we got to just cherish him while we still have him, because I don't know how much longer we're going to get to see this stuff out of him. He is absolutely the biggest star in TNA. He's the most over star in TNA. And I think if TNA really wanted to sell as many tickets as possible, they could do Joe Hendry versus Jeff Hardy at the UBS Arena. That's what for Slammiversary. That's where I would go. That's it. He's the biggest star they got. All right, let's go to the main event. Nick Nemeth and AJ Francis. And I think this is part of the show where the people that don't really watch TNA and they just kind of wait for my reviews before they actually check stuff out are going to expect me to say that this was a bad match, that AJ Francis sucks, and yada, yada, yada. Guys, I'm here to tell you that not only does AJ Francis not suck, AJ Francis is pretty good. And if he took himself a bit more seriously on television, I'm not talking about in life. I'm talking about AJ Francis, the character, right? The franchise, top dollar himself. If he was a more serious character and had more serious matches, I happen to think that he actually could do pretty well for himself. And I thought this match was a pretty good match. This was not a 30-minute kick out of everything classic. If you're going to say, oh, well, was it Will Ospreay level? Nope. That's not what they do. That's not what this match is supposed to be. AJ Francis is a good heel. He got the crowd into it. And at several points in the match, he got the crowd thinking that there could be a title change. He showed some pretty good athleticism, actually great athleticism during certain parts. And he kind of came across as a monster at different times. I ultimately thought that by the end of the match, you left thinking that AJ Francis is actually pretty good. And if he applied himself more, he could be a lot better. I'm here to tell you that AJ Francis is not a bad wrestler. He does not suck. And in fact, at times, he's actually pretty good. And I thought this match was a good match. I thought this match was a good main event. Good. I still think that the four-way should have closed the show because that had the most stakes. And I know the title was on the line, but nobody believed AJ Francis could win. Nobody believed it, right? Which is why I would not have closed the show with this match. I know it's the world title, but there were some empty seats after the Hardy Boys match was over, right? It was not a crazy amount, but you could probably tell that maybe like 100 to 200 people left out of 900 people. That wouldn't have happened if if that four-way match was in the main event, right? That just wouldn't have happened. So I would have put this match on probably first and got it out of the way. And it still would have been a good match. But since they closed the show with it, I don't think people left in a disappointment. I thought they got a pretty good main event. We're not talking 4 to 5 stars here, but 3.5. And I thought AJ Francis availed himself pretty well. I thought it was a decent match. I could have done without some of the Casey Navarro stuff, but they did the whole, Casey interferes and they kick him out. And that always gets a big pop. At one point, AJ Francis did an attitude adjustment from the ring apron, or from the ramp, because they had the stage with the ramp leading up to the ring, and he threw him over the top rope and he slung that boy halfway across the ring and he went plunk. That was a pretty stiff one. I thought that was a really good moment in the match. And then AJ Francis also hit a middle rope moonsault that looked incredible for a big 300-pounder like that. And AJ Francis is actively improving as a wrestler. He really is. And I think Billy makes a good point here. AJ Francis is a great athlete and a legit super heavyweight and is getting better as a wrestler too. People need to remember that AJ Francis has only been wrestling for 5 years. Yeah, I think he has improved a lot since his time in WWE. I think his time in TNA has been valuable. I know that his contract expires at the end of this month. I think they're going to keep him. I think that I think he's been a net positive for the company, and I think that they have been positive for him. I think the two people belong together, and I would like to see more of this stuff out of AJ Francis, and I think that if he can, I think that if they had been building him up for a little while, I don't know, certain internet fans would reject him no matter what, just because he was top dollar on WWE. So there's going to be a certain segment of the audience that he's never going to win over, and you got to just be okay with that. But I think that if he continues on the path that he's on and they give him bigger matches against really good wrestlers, I think eventually he could actually end up being pretty good. And being kind of a guy that you can put in, main events on television, main events on these shows, co-main events, maybe even be I know he won the digital media title, but maybe be like, if they ever get the international belt off PCO, like holding like mid card, like upper mid card level belts and doing big matches and stuff like that. So I thought this match was pretty good. I'm not going to go like 4 stars on it or nothing like that. I don't think anybody that watches it would, but I thought that it was pretty good. All right. So overall, Final Resolution, big thumbs up from me. I think Lucha said he gave it a B. I think B is a fair grade because it was a B level show, and I thought they delivered. I thought if you paid your $10 for Impact Plus or for TNA Plus this month, I thought you got your money's worth. All right, let's get to the chat real quick, and then I gotta go. I've already been on the air for almost 90 minutes. All right. Any quick thoughts on Silva, Carlos Silva, the new Anthem president? I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts. So Carlos Silva is replacing Anthony Ciccione, who replaced Richard Schaefer. So we had Richard Schaefer come over he was a former Golden Boy Boxing president, and he was Floyd Mayweather's promoter. He came to Anthem. He did absolutely dick. He didn't do a goddamn thing. And he went back, and now he's back with Mayweather, and I think he's doing some other he's back in boxing, doing some other promotional stuff. Carlos Silva comes in. He worked with World Series of Fighting, which is now PFL. And PFL has no ratings and can't draw any fans. In fact, TNA is a bigger draw than PFL. So, but they have been able to secure funding from the Saudis to be able to have a pretty sustainable company. Nobody watches it and nobody goes to the shows, right? TNA outdraws them by a significant amount. Even with former UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou in their company, TNA kills them, right? So he has had several other sports businesses and has had some success. I don't think that he's going to do anything for the company. It'd be like unless I see some evidence that this position actually matters, I think it's status quo. I don't think that he adds anything to the company. I thought that Richard Schaefer was going to be a big hire because he has had a track record of major success. He was a real guy. Golden Boy Promotions was the biggest boxing promotion in the world for a long time. They were bigger than Top Rank for a while. And he ultimately ended up leaving, and he did some stuff on the outs, like other boxing stuff, but he just became Floyd Mayweather's like promoter and John Jones's agent. So I thought like his connections would be big for the company, and nothing ever happened. So I would want to see some evidence that this is important before I actually pass judgment on it. I don't think it means anything, to be honest with you. Okay. Any thoughts on Rhino finishing up at TNA tonight? Yeah. You know what? He's been around since 2019, so he's been in the company for the last 5 years. I think he's been a producer agent. He's a Scott D'Amore guy, and Scott D'Amore's guys are getting phased out. Contract expires this weekend, and he's done with the company. They put him into the Hall of Fame. I thought they've treated Rhino very well. They've treated him like a legend. He's always been in not really marquee matches, but he's always had a presence in the company, and they bring him out every once in a while, and they treat him like a legend, and it's time for him to go do something else for a while. Maybe he'll go and be an agent in NXT or something like that. But I don't see this as being a bad thing for TNA. It just like when I saw this, I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Scott, like all the Scott D'Amore talent and Scott D'Amore agents and Scott D'Amore guys are being phased out, and he very much fits that mold. In fact, it would not surprise me to see him just be like actively involved with Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling going forward. That makes sense to me. He's a Detroit guy. He can just drive across the border and go help out Scott. I'm pretty sure that's just what's going to happen. I don't think TNA was fighting to keep him, and he probably, Scott D'Amore, he's like, they're like close friends. I get the feeling Rhino is getting paid a lot of money and wasn't really bringing much revenue in. And so this makes a whole lot of sense to me. I'm completely okay with it. He had a good 5 years, commensurate to what he brings to the table. He had a very good 5 years, though. He had some pretty good matches during his run too, occasionally, and he was in some big storylines. Was never a top push guy, but nor should he have been at this stage of his career. But I thought that Rhino always got treated pretty fairly here, and good for him for having a good five-year run, ending it by going into the Hall of Fame in his hometown, and then he also got a big spot in that Battle Royal. Yeah, so and then they gave him another big moment in the taping afterwards. So yeah, good for Rhino, good for TNA. And it's more than time to move on, though. But all right, guys, that is going to do it for me this week on Brace for Impact. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being subscribers to the Patreon. Thank you for being a subscriber to the YouTube channel. Hit that like button. Throw down a comment. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, until next time, mahalo.